What's going on, guys? It's Cal here from Buffalo SportsCenter, and today we're going to be talking about the Bills' injuries because all of a sudden everyone got hurt on the Bills, and defense looks half its health that it did in the beginning of the year, and it's all falling apart. We're 3-2 though, still got a lot of time this season. Don't freak out, but all of a sudden it seems everyone's going to panic. So let's talk about the injuries, though. First things first, Tre'Davious White. He got hurt last week against the Dolphins. Turned out to be a torn Achilles, which we all kind of assumed after looking at it. I mean, this is just a horrible loss for the Bills, an absolutely devastating loss for the Bills. Tre'Davious White was just getting back to speed after that ACL injury that he came back from last year for a couple games. It looked like he was just getting back up to speed, and the Achilles goes on him. He knew it right away. You saw him kind of throw a tantrum on the field. And this is a big loss, not only for the Bills, but for Trey White to himself. I mean, he struggled getting back from that ACL injury. He really did. He was not good mentally, and this is not going to be a good injury for him. Another year-long injury at least. You got to pray for Trey White. Hopefully he's doing okay mentally. And hopefully he could fight his way back to be able to play NFL football after this injury, but I just don't know. This is two major injuries back-to-back. It's going to be tough for him. Let's talk about who else we got, though. First things first, Kaiir Elam. I hate to say it, but he looked horrible against the Jags. He was by far the worst cornerback on the field against the Jaguars. He hasn't played a game, though, this year, so I'm not going to freak out too much yet. But, yeah, he did not look good, and it's clear as day why he did not play any game so far this season besides that Jaguars game. He just doesn't look up to par. But I've said before, I didn't understand why he wasn't playing because last season he had a couple big interceptions. He looked okay, right? He looked on the level of Benford. I guess we see why, right? He is not a good fit for this defense. Hopefully he could fit into it, but so far it just hasn't worked out for him. Then we got Dane Jackson. Dane Jackson, I got to say, he's looked good so far. Dane Jackson, surprisingly, has looked very good this season in his opportunities to play. A couple of huge plays against the Dolphins. Broke up that two-point conversion against Tyreek Hill. Had that massive hit and didn't look too bad against the Jags. We'll see what happens with him, though. Again, we've had him for a while. We know there's ups and downs, but so far, so good for him. Then Christian Benford, who I mentioned earlier. Christian Benford, he's a solid player, right? I don't think he's a star yet. I don't know if he's ever going to be a star. I don't know his potential. But so far, he's definitely serviceable. And he's had a good season so far this year. So hopefully he is cleared to come back this coming week. It looks pretty good. He's day-to-day right now. Missed that Jags game, but he should be good. And then last but not least, Taron Johnson. Let's talk about him a little bit because he's our slot cornerback, but he might have to shift to play on the outside a little bit now without Trey White. We'll see what happens. But Taron Johnson, he did get hurt last week, but he seems okay. Had some arguments about that field in Tottenham. But yeah, I do think the NFL should probably play on natural grass, and I think they will enforce a league-wide statement about that where teams have to switch to grass in the coming years. But we'll see. The last guy, the Bills just signed old friend Josh Norman to the practice squad. I mean, come on. There had to be better options out there, right? Josh Norman, he really shouldn't see the field. I mean, a couple seasons ago when he played for us, you could tell he was on the downfall of his career. He did not have the speed. The infamous Derrick Henry stiff arm still lives rent-free in my head. So with that being said, I don't think we'll see him on the NFL field, but I guess someone who knows the system is good to have in the building. We'll see. But yeah, wrapping up Trey White, he's definitely done for the year and could be done for good in the NFL. I mean, there's a chance the Bills cut him after this season if they decide to go out and sign, I don't know, for example, a Jair Alexander or something like that. If they trade for somebody that has, a big cap and they got to cut someone, Trey White might be that guy because I don't know if he's going to ever be able to play a game again. And if he is, what level will it be at? So let's wrap up with him. Now let's talk about DaQuan Jones. Pec injury for DaQuan Jones. DaQuan Jones was having the best year of his career by far. He was probably the top three, maybe the best D tackle in the league so far by analytic stats. I mean, DaQuan Jones getting hurt is huge, but it's not as big as Trey White because our D-line is very good. And last game I know against the Jags, we didn't really get to the QB that much, But you got to remember, we were without a ton of weapons on that D-line already going into that game. Leonard Floyd was already hurt, but he was still playing in that game. Von Miller barely played. He was on a pitch count. You were missing Greg Rousseau, so you got to keep that into account. But, let's look at the other guys on the D-line that have to step up. Poona Ford, first things first. Poona Ford has been a huge disappointment so far this season, but he hasn't really been needed because DaQuan Jones was so good on that D tackle. Now Poona Ford's going to be activated every single week, so it's time for him to shine. It really is, and we'll see what he has to do. Kingsley Jonathan, on the outside, he's looked phenomenal in the opportunities he's been given, so hopefully he can continue that because this whole D-line is going to have to step up their game now that DaQuan Jones is out for potentially the whole year. Ed Oliver, he's looked great so far this season. Looking good that we paid him big. I didn't think that was going to be a good move when we first signed him just because he hasn't been proven. He hasn't established himself. So far, so good for him, though. Greg Rousseau also looked phenomenal so far this year. Again, he was injured last game, but he is day-to-day. Should be back this week. We'll see what happens. And then A.J. Epinesa had a breakout game against the Jags. By far the best player on that D-line throughout the whole game. We'll see what happens to this D-line, but again, DaQuan Jones out for potentially probably the whole year. Maybe comes back late, maybe comes back for playoffs if we make it at this point. We'll see what happens. Now let's talk about the killer injury, Matt Milano. I mean, you got to be kidding me. This injury happened kind of out of nowhere. No one really saw it happen, and this could just be a killer because we'll see what happens with Milano. He could return late in the year, could return for playoffs. It doesn't look like it's an ACL injury, which is great, just kind of like a fracture. We'll see what happens, but again, once they put that air cast on and they put him on the cart to leave the stadium, you knew it was going to be a bad injury. And mostly why this is a bad injury for the Bills, it's not because Matt Milano's the best linebacker on the team. It's not because Matt Milano's a top 10 linebacker, maybe top 5 in the league. It's because our experience at linebacker is very, very weak. Bernard, he's looked great so far, right? But he has zero experience. This is his first year, and now he's going to be the top linebacker. It was nice when you had Milano there, kind of guiding him, kind of taking the hard assignments, leaving Bernard over the middle. It worked out. Now Bernard's going to have to manufacture his own plays. He's going to have to run that defense, which he has been good at. But again, without Milano, it's going to be tough on the field. Then we got Dorian Williams, who has absolutely zero experience. Got his first NFL snaps last game against the Jags. He looked okay, right? You can't really expect too much. A lot of people say he looks like Tremaine Edmonds. Not only physically, but also kind of the way he moves around the field. So we'll see what happens there, but he's definitely a little smaller than Tremaine Edmonds, and I don't expect anything too big from him just because, he wasn't really expecting to play all that much this year, and now he's thrown into a starting role. A.J. Klein, we just signed him to the active roster from the practice squad. Again, A.J. Klein, I like him. He has a lot of experience, but he's gotten to the point in his career where he is so slow, getting to that point where, I didn't think he was going to see the NFL field again, and now all of a sudden, you might have to. Again, A.J. Klein a couple of seasons ago for us, different story. I was a big fan. I thought he was the perfect guy to make them open field tackles, but we'll see what happens with him as well. But yeah, those are the major injuries. Again, there's a ton of injuries on the Bills. We'll see what happens, but those are just, the major ones. We could talk about the offense a little bit too. Kincaid in concussion protocol. We'll see what happens with him. Dawson Knox, minor injury. We'll see what happens with him. It seems the whole team is injured, but I want you guys to let me know in the comments section. What should the Bills do? Mainly on defense. Should they look towards free agency? Maybe get a couple of older guys in the system to replace some of our younger guys like a Dorian Williams who, we don't really have too much trust in. Or do we look in-house? Do we just have these young guys and, guys that are on the practice squad come up and just serve time until our guys return late in the season? I don't know if that's the right move. Do we look to trade? Maybe we get a big name at the trade deadline. The trade deadline's coming up at the end of the month. And the NFL trade deadline is not like it used to be. It is all of a sudden, it is a spectacle. It is a big day. A lot of teams make moves. Back in the day, it used to be maybe one or two moves. It was not a big thing, but now the trade deadline is kind of like the NBA, where it's just a frenzy. We'll see what happens, but thank you guys for watching this. I'm stressing as it is. Of course, the Bills season has had a lot of ups and downs, and now we're in another divot. Hopefully, we can get a big bounce-back win against the Giants. We'll see what happens, but thank you guys for watching. This has been Kyle, and enjoy the rest.